Crank, and I am the founder of the Northwest Washington Civic Circle, which is a civic engagement organization that's focused on North Puget Sound, so Snohomish County North. Today, we are hosting a series of conversations around the RFP that's going to be voted on here in Edmonds. So with that, I want to introduce our guests for today. And I do see that we have a couple of commissioners on here as well. So welcome. I do want to level set and just say that we are this as a listening session. So we do have questions that we are going to ask the chief and the communications officer that we will do around that. But there will be several other meetings across the city in the coming months where it'll be a bit more interactive. But we do want to treat this as an informational session. So with that, if I could ask the chief and the communications director to introduce themselves, we'll go from there.
I guess I'll start. I'm Bob Eastman. I serve as the fire chief of South County Fire, which proudly provides service to the city of Edmonds. I'm going on my 29th year, and I'm glad to be here and being able to answer the questions you guys have today.
Thank you.
I'm Christie Veley. I'm the communications director at South County Fire, and also very glad to be here, glad to answer questions that residents have.
Thank you so much for carving out time. I know this is going to take a lot between now and April. So here is where I want to start things off with this, like a South County Fire 101. I think there's a lot of residents that are not aware of South County Fire, or when it got renamed, or what does that even mean, or what is even an RFA? So do you want to start out by talking about what South County Fire is, how it's incorporated, and how it is a regional fire authority?
So I'll start, and Christie will fill in on maybe some of the things that I'm not clear on, and I apologize ahead of time. I'm a fire guy, and I've been in the military, so I use acronyms.
Yes.
And I know that's not always the easiest when we do that, and I'm going to apologize up front because I know as hard as I try not to do, I will. A little bit about just South County and who we are. I joined the organization in 1996. When I joined, I was part of Fire District 11, which doesn't exist anymore. We are a merged organization of Fire District 11, Fire District 1, City of Montlake Terrace, City of Linwood, and the City of Edmonds. And that's happened over, the last 25, 28 years. The original contracts that we had with our cities, well, let me back up even further. In late 90, early 2000, Fire District 11 merged and became Fire District 1. Shortly thereafter, around 2005, the City of Montlake Terrace and the City of Briar, under contract, became part of South County. In 2010, the City of Edmonds came on as a contract entity, and we took all their people and brought them into, at the time, Fire District 1, and we provide fire service for the region. In 2017, or late 16, early 17, we had a conversation with the City of Linwood to create what is now South County Fire, or the Regional Fire Authority. We did that by the vote in 17. We created the RFA in October, and then it wasn't very long after that the City of Mill Creek annexed into the RFA, and then the City of Briar and the City of Montlake Terrace followed and annexed into RFA. And then we fast forward to where we are today, where the City of Edmonds is putting an annexation ballot measure before the citizens of Edmonds to see if they too want to annex into the RFA. That's kind of a quick shot of where we were and where we are now.
And I'll just add to that. So we serve in total, we serve about 300,000 residents across Southwest Snohomish County. And last year, firefighters responded to more than 38,000 calls. So a few thousand calls every month is about the load that we're seeing.
Okay, thank you for that. So again, I think another issue that some people were confused about is that there's such a presence here, as I think some people still think that Edmonds has their own fire department, and we haven't had our own since, and we've been contracting with you guys since. So that contract ends at the end of this year.
Yep, it ends at the end of 25.
Okay, so one reason why this is becoming a hot button issue for those here is because of the budget. Everyone's having budget issues, trying to figure out ways to save money. So that seems to be the crux of what's being talked about. So let's start there. I guess the general question I want to start with is, if Edmonds does not annex into the RFA, will they still be able to contract as they currently have been, or is it just done?
So the way so we have an agreement as part of the conversation we've had for the annexation process. If the annexation vote is that the citizens of Edmonds don't want to be part of the RFA, we have an agreement, we call it a temporary services agreement, that's already agreed to. And that South County Fire, who is your current provider of fire service, I am the fire chief for the citizens of Edmonds. We will provide service under that agreement for the city of Edmonds through 2026. And there's the ability for that agreement to continue on in 1-year increments at the agreement of both South County Fire and the city of Edmonds. So there's fire service in that temporary service agreement for 26 if the annexation isn't successful or the citizens vote no. And then there'll be continued dialogue with the city of Edmonds about where they want to go and what they want their future of fire service to be. So you will have us as your provider through the end of 26, and then there'll be more conversations about what happens in the years after that.
I think it's important.
Go ahead, Christie, sorry.
I just wanted to point out that so the contract that would go through 2026 would be at a different rate than the current contract with Edmonds. And that is because residents of Edmonds, currently enjoy a much lower rate for fire and EMS services than residents in other areas of the RFA. And so it is not fair to continue providing that same service at a different rate. And so if the annexation measure did not pass and the temporary services agreement would need to be in place for 2026, the rate of the contract would be essentially the same rate that other residents in the RFA are already paying.
So of course, everyone's talking about it's funded through property taxes. So if annexation occurs and if the owner of a home here is assessed at $1 million, and I think you have a number that you wanted to talk about as well, that total property tax increase that an owner would see if it was voted in.
So I'll start, and Christie will make sure I have everything correct. So use the average or the median home value in Edmonds. We base that off of 2024 because we could pull it from the county assessor site. So the numbers we're referring to today is an $895,007 home. And because the benefit charge is a funding mechanism for the RFA, we have this home at 2,500 square feet. Currently, if you look at the contract for fire service in 2025, that home value pays for fire service $680 a year through the contract. If they were annexed into the RFA in 2025, the RFA's taxes would be $1,117. Now, remember, the EMS levy that the city has would no longer be in, and you just get the South County Fire's EMS levy, just for that clarification, because the city wouldn't have one then. And really what that equates to for increase of what you're currently paying for fire service is about a $437 annual increase for fire service. The city, and I can say this I'm happy about this. The city has very open and transparent about what they're going to do in the fall with regards to the fire department expense comes, if annexation is successful, the fire department expense comes out of the city expense. And the city has said that based on where they are fiscally, that they need to retain the tax dollars to pay for other services within the city. So the increase for fire, if you were annexed in, is about $437 a year, $3,600 a month. The total increase that the taxpayers will see is $867 annually. And I know that's a lot of me explaining it, but that's the end. It's an $867 annual increase to a homeowner with a $895,000 home. Of that, it's a $437 annual increase. And again, I'm happy to say the city has been very transparent with the citizens of Edmonds about what their intentions are in the fall.
And Alicia, if you wanted to, for, dollar home, it would be about $100 more. I think one of the things that's a little different about the Regional Fire Authority is that we're not completely funded by just property taxes. We are funded in part by property taxes, a fire levy and an EMS levy, but we're also funded by a benefit charge And what that is a kind of fair way to fund fire services, because it's not based on your property value. It's based on the size of your property and the use of your property and the risk. And so a commercial building that's large and maybe stores a lot of, or gases or something, or would pay a lot more than a residential home. So that is a portion of our funding, and kind of a little bit more fair.
And when you say fire services, just to clarify, that also includes EMS.
Yes, and yeah, thank you for the clarification. And we should add that of what we do is EMS. More than 80% of our 38,000 calls a year are EMS services.
And so one of the questions that came in, again, just asking for clarification purposes, one of the questions that came in and said, would Edmonds residents have less control over services if annexation is approved? And I don't think there's a case of a loss of control or anything, because it would be the same thing, right?
Well, I'll give it from my perspective as in the seat I fill is through a contract. The relationship for what we currently do is with the city council. If people annex into the RFA, they have a voice. Every ballot measure, anything, things, they have a vote and a voice. And also have the ability, if they do annex into the RFA, to run and be part of our elected board. And the way our board is out is we have five district commissioner positions and 2 at-large positions. And so, be it at a minimum in one of the districts, and then we have 2 at-large spots. So you could have 3 citizens from Edmonds on my board, and they would have a direct influence on how the fire department works, and they could be part of that, which they can't today. And based on, go do levy lid lifts like everybody needs to do to maintain and keep up with cost, because we're limited to the 1%, just like the cities are. The citizens of Edmonds, if they're annexed in, would have a direct voice for what we needed for revenue and those kind of pieces. So I think they have at the citizen level, they have a voice of their own on everything related to South County Fire if they're annexed in.
And that was actually my follow-up question, was going to be about the Board of Commissioners and how that representation would look should Edmonds become annexed into the RFA.
Yeah, and I guess I'll clarify that just a little bit, because I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding with our district commissioners' positions. We're not like the county council where live in county council position 1, only the citizens in that district get to vote for their commissioner at the county level. They don't get to vote on the others. In the case of the RFA, every citizen gets to vote for all 7 positions. So if the citizen of Edmonds, if city annexes into the RFA, the citizens of Edmonds don't just vote for their district representative that comes from Edmonds, they vote for all 7. They have a voice in every commissioner that sits on our board. So that's an important distinction, because I think when people think districting, they think it only comes from one place, and often, and that's not the case for junior taxing entities. It's everybody gets to vote. And I think I saw a question, and how many districts, and when we redistrict, if Edmonds actually does annex into the RFA, we would then have to go and redistrict our 5 districted positions. And we'd have to have that done in early 27 for folks that wanted to run for the commissioner positions that are open. They'd have to run. And so I don't know what those districts would look like. I can just say that Edmonds at least is in 1. And there is a possibility that they could be in 2 districts depending on how that process plays out.
So another question that came in earlier this morning is from Teresa Hollis. And her question is, if annexation is approved, the RFA will collect several $1 million more to serve Edmonds. Will the taxes paid by neighboring Mount Lake Terrace and Linwood go down by millions, or in general as well?
So I guess I'll answer the question this way. Is the city of Edmonds, we have a contract with them, and the city of Edmonds pays their contract every year. I will also say that the contract cost that we have in our current agreement with the city of Edmonds does not cover the full cost of those 3 fire stations. If you look at the RFA, you look at our overall budget, we spend about $7.4 million per fire station to operate. And so, and we're in or 16, well, no, 17 years into this agreement, and there's a lot that has changed. Just in where fire trucks are almost twice what they were 15 years ago. And so there's a whole lot of costs that have gone up that the current agreement we have with the city of Edmonds don't capture. So the question at the end is, that's what we currently pay. Yes, I don't see the RFA overall taxes going down as a result of Edmonds annexing in, to answer that question specifically.
Another
I
question.
guess I'm sorry, Alicia.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, so as Chief Eastman was pointing to, right cost of service in Edmonds is unfortunately not covered by the contract, which is sort of, why we're at this crossroads right now. But other residents of the RFA are now paying a higher rate than the residents in Edmonds, by about 50 cents or more. I think the question was speaking to whether the cost would sort of be the entire RFA. And I guess I would just say that our goal is for everyone who receives our services to pay the same rate for the same services. Whether you own $1 million home in Edmonds or you own $1 million home in Mill Creek, you would pay the same rate for the same service. And that's kind of how we see that, and how that would everybody would pay the same rate for the same service.
Would response rates change in any way, whether we're annexed in or stay on contract?
So the current, assuming you're talking about response and service levels. So the service aren't going to change immediately. The service that the citizens of Edmonds receive now, they'll continue to receive. But the RFA, or South County Fire, is looking at the future needs that we have, and we've identified the fact that we need 3 additional fire stations to provide the service full RFA. And when we looked at Edmonds as part of service area and included that in this conversation in the study we did, and we are in a 3rd phase of an environmental study to purchase the old Valley Village property, or 216th and 99, for an infill fire station. Obviously that takes time. You have to find the resources, build the structure, and you have to find the resources to put people in it. But there is a plan to actually add a fire station there, which will increase service. And that station will provide service to the city of Edmonds. I think in our initial calculations, it's about 55 to 60% of that station call demand will be in the city of Edmonds. And so we are looking forward to where we need to go. And I'd also add, we're looking at a fire station on Alderwood Mall Parkway, just south of Fred Meyer. We've purchased the property. I know some people will say, well, that's not in the city of Edmonds. How does that benefit us? But when you look at the fire service as a whole, think of it from a perspective of dominoes. If I have another domino or another resource I can put in, it frees up and it increases the availability of those other resources, and does have an effect where it does improve or at least keep resources available for the city of Edmonds. Now, whether that increases response times or not, but what it does is it puts us in a place that we can keep response times from eroding away by having additional resources within the system. And I can add a station that's maybe 2 stations away or service areas away from downtown Edmonds, but on major fires, that resource comes as a first alarm assignment. And if I increase station reliability or add a resource, it does have an overall improvement in the whole region. And in this case, Edmonds would see that. But that's not going to happen tomorrow. You got to plan and hire, and some of it takes time. But we're in the conversation with the board right now about what does that look like and how are we going to do it, because we know we need it.
And that actually goes into my next question, which was around, what are plans of South County Fire in and around Edmonds, regardless of the annexation vote? So the 99 property seems to be one. Are there any others, whether it's service, whether it's connectivity with community, or is there anything on the docket?
So I'll add that we've a facilities plan. Station 20 in the Esperance area is need of a tear down rebuild. So that's in our plans to rebuild Station 20 in the Esperance area. I think one from a fire chief's perspective is the current is very specific on how we staff in the city of Edmonds. If this annex into the RFA, it would allow me as the fire chief to move resources and move them a little bit more dynamically to provide services. For example, right now in the city of Edmonds, stations 16, 17, and 20 are cross-staffed. And what I mean by cross-staffed is they have 3 people and they have an engine and a medic unit at each one of those stations. And depending on the call, the crew either takes the engine or the medic unit. We've been having conversations about, our call demand is high enough now to where that was economic and feasible, and probably the right way to do service and do it efficiently. And we're at a spot where call demand is high enough now where if Station 17 is at the hospital and we've all delayed wallets and stuff because of the hospitals, that station doesn't have any resources at it, i.e. people, until they get back from the transport. And some of those transports can be over an hour long. And so we're looking at potentially, uncross staffing and dedicating engines so they have a higher station reliability, and then taking the transport units and looking at it from the holistic full RFA and make sure we provide that capability. So we're looking at those kind of things to improve. Some of the challenges you have in the city of Edmonds specifically is that we don't have any resources to the west. It's a water. And so where Lynn stations that surround it, downtown Edmonds support or fire service support from the west. And so they have to get their fire service support all from the north and the east and south. And so those are things where that's a challenge for me to make sure we get the effective force that's needed to do the work we do, knowing that the whole west side is water in the city of Edmonds, for example, and how can we realign resources to ensure that we can get there and get the right amount of people there and the appropriate amount of time to do what we're tasked to do.
And this might be a fire 101 question, because I know I hear this a lot as well. When you talk about staffing, and there are people that will anecdotally bring up, why does the whole team have to go to the grocery store? Why does everyone have to go to a certain call or a certain thing all the time? I think I know the answer because I had some experience with this down in the Bay Area, but I would love for you to be able to talk about kind of how many people are typically on a shift, and what is that response travel collectivity thing works.
So I think it's important to start that everybody that staffs, whether it's a medic unit, an aid car, engine or ladder, command rig, they're all either an EMT or a paramedic. So they all have the ability to do EMS. And teams, my engine companies and my ladders have 3 people assigned to them. Transport units have either 2 or 3, depending on what station they're at. And then I have command resources, single resources. I have a 24-hour community resource paramedic, a 24-hour MSO, and 3 battalion chiefs or command chiefs that manage the high acuity incidents that we have. And so our response, a lot of people, I get this question a lot. Why do you send an engine to an EMS call? And for us, we have with the dispatch center works in the county is all our that are GPS tracked. And so when you get an engine to an EMS call, that's because it's the closest resource available to the event. And so, and that's get an engine versus maybe a dedicated or a ambulance, because the ambulance is further away and you get the engine there first to make sure we take care of the citizen in need, and then the ambulance or the medic unit comes to do the transport to the hospital. So that's why you get an engine, is they're all EMS providers, and we send the closest appropriate unit, and oftentimes that's an engine because I have more of them, right? Or a ladder because I have them, and that's why you get that. Now, some people say, why do I send so many resources to, somebody who's and they're not breathing? We know a difference in outcome. And when we define outcome, we mean somebody whose heart stops and they're not breathing. And our outcome is measured by, do they leave the hospital? And they have hospital. We've identified the fact that we need between 8 and 11 people on those type of calls. And it has to do with good CPR. And for anybody who's ever done CPR, If you do CPR longer than 2 minutes, your quality of CPR is reduced because you get tired. And so and everybody has an assigned task. And as a result, we have save rates that are some of the highest in the country when it comes to those kind of events. So not everybody that calls 911 gets 8 or 9 or 10 people. Sometimes you get an engine and the transport unit comes and takes them to the hospital. Sometimes you only get the engine. Sometimes you'll only get the transport unit. It just depends on who is closest and do they have the right people on board and the equipment to actually manage the event. So that's my long-winded answer, and I'm sure Christie will add a couple things to that.
Well, I guess I'll just say that we know that that works. We know that it works to, have is very highly trained, where each person has a very specific role in what we call high performance CPR. Last year, we learned that our overall cardiac arrest survival rate was double the national average. And so we know that work really does translate into lives, and that matters. When it's your loved one, it can really make a difference.
So this is a question more for me than anybody else, but I'm hoping that I get the answer that I want from this, which is, does South County do anything with the community around, kind of like if you will, about what fire does? My frame of reference was, when I was in the Bay Area and I ran a leadership program, our public safety day, we did it with both police and fire. And one of the things we would do with fire is fire would take us to their training facility and kind of demonstrate what, the big tall wall that you climb down. And that was one of our favorite days because, again, it brought something that people didn't know about before. And maybe they walked away with a greater understanding of what fire does. Is that something that you currently do? Or is that something that might be done in the future? Is there anything along those lines that are happening or could happen?
So I'm going to defer to Christie because
Yeah.
I think we do a lot of things to include the community in what we do, not just what your fire department does and the services we provide, but also how they can take care of themselves in disaster and those. So I guess I'm going to stop and let Christie just answer that question because I think she'll do a better job than I.
We have a lot of programs that are focused on fire and life safety. Our ACT program teaches people how to perform hands-only CPR, how to administer an antidote to somebody experiencing opioid overdose, how to use an AED, how to use a tourniquet, and we've trained 25,000 people since that program began. There are programs like that are focused on fire and life safety. And then I guess what I'll say is we try to provide an opportunity just about every month for the community to come into one of our fire stations and learn about our services, meet firefighters, get to look at the fire trucks. And so we do have an opportunity coming up to do that on March 13th. We will have an open house at Station 17 in downtown Edmonds, and we would just invite everybody to come out. We're going to be doing a high performance CPR demonstration, so you can come and see it in action, talk to firefighters, ask the questions that you want to ask. And if you can't wait till March 13th, we also have a Scout Day open house on March 1st, and that's going to be at our Mariner Fire Station 11, and the entire community is invited to that. And we'll have a lot of activities for Scouts and anybody else who wants to come.
And if you would send that information on to me, I'll make sure to share it out. That would be great.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to the EMS costs, because I knew it's either like 80 or 85% of the calls that come in. What are those response times like right now?
So how I measure response times, because I think everybody does a little bit different. So we're looking at our 2024 response data for the RFA now and be able to do it on an annual report. How we measure our response times is from time dispatch picks up the phone and talks to the person that needs help first to when our first unit arrives on scene. And we have been right around 9 minutes and 30 seconds from the time people call 911 to the time we actually have our first unit arriving on scene and I'm going to say all the calls that require lights and siren, because we do calls that don't require lights and siren. And we don't count those in that response time. We look at the calls that require lights and siren response. And we're right around we've been between 9 minutes and 9 minutes and 45 seconds I don't know where we are in 2024 yet. Challenge like all safety, quite frankly, all services is we have increased population. We deal with increased traffic. People, can drive I-5 and see the growth that's happening and the density that's coming. And all of that does impact, response times to a certain extent. I'm proud of our response times because, they've extended a little bit, but we've been able to keep them and the commissioners allowed us to add staffing as we've asked for it and shown we need it. And so we continue to add resources as appropriate to maintain that level of response. So I don't have the 2024 annual report done yet. My staff's working on it now, and I hope to have it here in the next 3 weeks. And I'd be more than happy to share it with you when it's done.
That'd be great. Thank you. And so, of course, because this is kind of the talk town right now, because it's the subject of a special election on April 22nd, we're also starting to look at what other communities are doing, what other cities are doing. And so Tia sent over a question about this. Hi, Tia. And wanted to say, Shoreline voted yes recently to establish their own RFA with 2 other cities. And that measure appears to be passing. Any thoughts that you have around that, if any?
I just was the chief of Shoreline here on Thursday or Wednesday. So a couple things about the vote with Shoreline and North Shore is it's important to remember that the city of Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, and Shoreline don't have their own fire department. They get their fire service from the fire districts, right? And so the city of Shoreline, it's fire service from District 4, King County District Shoreline Fire Department, and Kenmore and Lake Forest Park get it from North Shore. So that annexation vote was the fire districts consolidating, making one RFA. And I think we have seen last 10, 12, 14, 15 years of fire service consolidations happening across the state. You've seen it happen multiple times in Snohomish County, not just the RFA or South County Fire. You see it with our neighbors to the east, District 7. Lake Stevens Fire, Monroe Fire have merged with District 7. You've seen the creation of the Marysville Fire Authority. You've seen the creation of North County's Fire Authority, which was all smaller entities that have merged into one. So it's not surprising. Shoreline and North Shore are talking about regionalization for a long time. They work seamlessly together like a lot of us do. I think that's an important point for the folks to know is we run seamlessly with the city of Shoreline too. If a Shoreline unit is closer than one of our units, Shoreline comes. We don't have walls that are hard and fast. And so, I think you saw that vote, and to be honest, I'm not surprised that you saw it pass at the rate it did.
So
Add to that. Oh,
keep doing that to me, Christie.
sorry. I just want, a lot of the, we're seeing a push is because it can make a lot of economic sense because you're joining resources, you're joining tools, for example, for regional fire authority, county fire, regional fire authority, we have 2 ladder trucks. And those 2 are, stations 10 and 14, stationed in the city of Edmonds, but the city of Edmonds benefits from those ladder trucks being in the RFA, having them available for fires, yes, but even playing a role in fire protection class ratings, which impact insurance rates. Those are impacted by having resources like ladder trucks. And so it can make a lot of economical sense for smaller entities to be part of a larger entity and gather those resources because it becomes more efficient to share those resources rather than 5 different, fire departments each trying their own ladder truck, which we know has become very expensive.
Of course, you went right into my next question, which is going to be about more economic stuff. But 2, I just realized I'm remiss a bit. And I should say that when we talk about the different ladders or different stations by number, can you talk about where those locations are geographically? Because I think the average person doesn't know where 10 is or 17 is or like that, as a frame of reference.
You want to go, Christie, or you want me to go? So I'm horrible because I refer to station numbers where Christie refers to what we call the stations like Hilltop and Lake Serene, which actually give a geographical reference to, grew up in our, Station 14 is Blue Ridge Fire Station, and the one that we have up by 56th and 99, 156th and 99, Keeler's Corner. So, and I think it would be beneficial if you want, Alicia, that Christie's got a really decent map that spells that out, and shows, because I think it's we're 15 and it's in fire stations that service to everybody we serve, including Edmonds. And so knowing where those are, I think it's important, because it's not just station 16, 17, and 20 that Edmonds refers to as their stations. You've got station 14, station 15, the Blue Ridge station, the one at center, or the city complex in Linwood. You've got the Briar station and the Malt Lake Terrace station, which all provide service on a very regular basis to the Edmonds residents, on a high frequency. So that would be something Christie can send to give you a frame of reference of what we're talking about.
So I have a couple more questions, and I'll kind of toss it back to you for any final comments that you want to leave. So one is kind of going back to an economic question for you, which is, how does South County Fire's cost compare to other agencies?
So I'm proud of this too. South County Fire runs lean. My administratively, we run lean. Operationally, we're lean. And if you look at what our rates, if you add an equivalent for the benefit charge for the service levels we provide, both full service, ALS transport, BLS transport, hazmat, technical rescue, marine response. I've got a community resource paramedic. We have duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are the lowest burden on the region. And I'm proud of that. That's a testament to not just my staff, but it's a testament to my board. We take our fiscal responsibility really seriously, and as a result, we provide an exceptional service, and we're very conscientious of what we cost the people we serve. And right now we provide the most, I think, economic expense to the taxpayer of anybody within the region. And I'm proud of that.
And then my final question would kind of go back to what we talked about. I just kind of want to ask you, like, brass tacks, like, votes no, not going to annex in. What happens next? What there's some fear from some folks that if we say no, then services will go away. There'll be a decline in services, even if we're still under contract. What does that really look like if the voters say no?
So we do an agreement to provide services 26 if the citizens of Edmonds vote no in April. But the reality of that service agreement is it's based on what you would do in the RFA. So it's going to be at a higher dollar amount. It's not going to be what the current contract is. And so the challenge with it is it's going to cost, the city will need to figure out a way to fund the fire service agreement in 2026. And that becomes a question of, for the city, if folks vote no, but it's a significant increase in expense with the city. And so that's kind of where the people vote no. For us, and the agreement we have for 26 going to be it's more money than it is in 2025.
Right. And and please correct me if I'm wrong, I somehow remember that I think initially the contract was supposed to be into 2030. So, but then it got kind of backtracked. Can you talk about that?
So the original agreement we signed in 2010. It was a 20-year agreement. In December of 23, the Board of Fire Commissioners, part of the agreement, we had a clause in the agreement that allowed us to terminate with a 2-year notification. We did that at the end of 23, which then made the current existing contract terminate December 31st of 2025. And the reason behind that is it's the reality, and I think Christie said it, and I think we've talked about it, and I use this analogy. We have areas where one side is a resident, and on the other side of the road, they're an RFA resident. And in the context of the current relationship we have, the Edmonds resident pays about 76 cents for fires per thousand. And in the RFA, they're paying $1.16. And we got to a place where the board couldn't have that disparity continue, of having that kind of a difference between what's paid in a contract, what's paid in the citizens that are actually part of the RFA and we tax directly. And so, that was the reason behind that. It was, I'll be quite frank, we like the fact the city of Edmonds is considering, and the citizens are considering, to annex into RFA. Our other partner cities who were contracts have seen it. I think we had a vision of that when we entered into the contract agreement back in 2010, at least from the fire department's perspective. But in the end, the reason the termination is we had that disparity in the cost, and the citizens of Edmonds were receiving the same service level for a significantly reduced rate versus those in the RFA. Christie, you got anything to add on that?
No, I guess I'll just add that, we love serving the city of Edmonds. Firefighters are your firefighters. We have served Edmonds for 15 years and do hope to continue doing so. And, we do want to provide the service at rate to all the residents we serve.
All right, well, with that, we are going to wrap up this conversation. Thank you so much. Like I said, this is more to be as an intro into what this RFA is supposed to be about, and be able to hear directly from South County Fire about kind of the pros and cons and the issues up, and answer any of the questions that we have from the residents. So thank you everyone who submitted questions. I try to get in as many as possible. This video will be posted across on our website as well as our social media stream. So this will be accessible to everyone from today leading up to voting day. So thank you so much. And then Northwest Washington Civic Circle is also hosting an in-person hybrid conversation around this with the city, as well as with residents who volunteer to be on the pros committee and the cons committee that will do the write-up for the voters guide. That will happen on Saturday, February 22nd at 1 p.m. at Edmonds Lutheran Church. And I think you guys are going to be there for that as well. So I look forward to seeing you in person. And again, thank you for being here, sharing this information. Christy, I look forward to getting those follow-up emails from you with those resources that will also be posted everywhere. And please feel free to share this out when you want to. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.